dzisiejszą uroczystość uświetni wykład holenderskiej architektki Caroline Bos Dlaczego innowacyjność jest ważna, a jest to możliwe dzięki zaangażowaniu i udziałowi Ambasady Królestwa Niderlandów, za co bardzo serdecznie dziękujemy. Zapraszam na scenę panią Caroline Bos. Mrs. Bos, please take the stage. Caroline Bos razem z Benem van Berkelem jest współtwórczynią UNStudio, znanego między innymi z rewolucyjnych i kultowych dziś projektów jak Most Erasma, Muzeum Mercedes-Benz czy Mobius House. W 2013 roku po wielu międzynarodowych sukcesach UNStudio ogłosiło, że zamierza przeorganizować się w studio architektoniczne open source, w którym pracownicy będą działać w ramach 4 platform wiedzy. Nowatorska organizacja, zrównoważona architektura, inteligentne parametry i innowacyjne materiały. Oprócz obiektów architektonicznych i założeń urbanistycznych na całym świecie, UNStudio projektuje dziś między innymi nowe materiały budowlane, na przykład przejrzysty beton, bright wall. Z pomocą robotów tworzy instalacje artystyczne, które w przyszłości mogą służyć jako elementy konstrukcyjne. Przygotowuje wystawy w technologii wirtualnej rzeczywistości, a nawet opracowuje prototypy drukowanych w 3D butów. Przed Państwem Caroline Bos. Please, we are waiting for your speech.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introductions, and thank you for inviting me and UNStudio to share your event with you, and thank you very much for the organizers, for the ambassador, and everyone who contributed to us being here. We're very honored and very interested. For me, it's my first visit to the city, and I think I have a lot to learn about it. And I'm also very happy that this is all under the name of innovation, because I call this lecture Knowledge Matters, but I also think innovation matters. And why do we think innovation matters so much for us? For us, it has always been, and it is really a driving force in our practice to be innovative. It's really one of the core values that we strive for, but it's very internal. It is something that really has to come from within, this drive to innovate. It's not that we feel that we need to impose innovation on the environment. It's the other way around, that we feel that our discipline, which is an old one, which is also the beauty of architecture, that it is a very old inherited discipline, but that we keep it alive by innovating and by finding relevance for architecture in today's changing world. And that is to us what innovation really means. You can see in this introductory slide a little bit the diversity of the sort of projects that we like to do. The Erasmus Bridge was already mentioned, but this is a project in China, many projects in many different places, and all really connected by this sense of continuously wanting to innovate, sometimes in very small steps, but they build up. So really we are seeing now, these are all little images of the projects that we did over the many years. And in some ways they are connected, because each innovation becomes something you've learned, and it can become something you build upon and take it forward with you into the future. Sometimes you can't also realize your innovative thought very quickly. You have to be patient and work it through, and maybe many years later it'll finally materialize in a project. And as we look through even our own history of how we look, how we work, try to innovate, propose new new solutions maybe, then we could see sometimes connections to these choices. And this we then can see as we are developing our own knowledge. So knowledge really is very much connected to innovation. And it was already mentioned that the network, possibly a very Dutch approach, is also central to how we see UNStudio. And why? Because a network is all about being connected, about connectivity. And then we can ask yet another question. What are we connecting when we are interested in networks and in connectivity? Well, maybe what we are really connecting is the place, the environment that we are all live in, then how we as people experience it and behave in that environment, what is our experience, but also technology. And I want to show you a little fragment of a documentary I recently found, which also explains this.
We are technology. We are indistinguishable from our technologies. We're interdependent, we're intertwined. There is no clear division anymore. I think the future will be a reconnection of a previously widely divergent strategy that was undertaken by nature. In other words, human beings have grown outward in a huge family tree. We're all related to one another in this radiating family tree, with each branch going out, with each of us representing the tip of that branch. And it's grown outward, outward, outward over the entire history of humanity and pre-humanity. But we're starting to reconverge into a network of communication, a network of shared identity through the sharing of information in the internet. And we're going to reconnect that tree that radiated outward with all those branches and all those distinct points. Most or all of them will just reconverge into one huge identity.
So, as I said, so it's the place, the environment that we connect to, how people experience it, how people live in that environment, and then technology connecting also with that. But when we think about technology within UNStudio, we are not really interested primarily as a design tool, and we never have been. For us, it's not so much about parametric design. What it really is about is also about connecting to, for instance, the building industry. What we can do now, how technology can make possible. It has been made possible by technology. So when we are developing our knowledge, these are all different aspects that come into it that are all, again, about connecting different things together. We do this internally by also organizing our own conferences, by inviting experiment into our studio, by also inviting collaborations in different projects where we, it was already mentioned in the introduction, where we do different studies into different materials and all these things. And these are the platforms of that knowledge organization. And then about a year ago, we also collated those different experiences with knowledge in this book. And within that book, we distinguish also 11 knowledge tools, because this is a form of knowledge that's deeply personal. It's not about that we Googled a lot or that we found a lot of knowledge from books that other people wrote. This is knowledge that we actually derive from our practice. So any one of us can be a knowledge worker, and by really seeing our own experiences, living them consciously and archiving them and working with them and seeing them as valuable, not just focusing on the end product, on a building at the end of it, but really the whole trajectory leading to that, where we develop all that knowledge, is also deeply valuable to us. So a little snapshot of our studios. The material practice is also there, but these knowledge tools are something that we developed over this long period of time. And another reason why it's important for us to think of that is that we are also living what is sometimes called the knowledge economy. So we also find it important for architects to ask themselves, if everyone is living in the knowledge economy, and what does that mean for architecture? Because how can architecture transform itself, innovate itself to also become part of this new knowledge economy? So these four knowledge tools I would like to take you through this evening. The first of that is what we call the big detail. And the detail is something that is a traditional, classical element in architecture, and we often see it as a little detail. But in fact, we are saying a detail can be also something enormously big that supports the whole project. This, for instance, is an example of such a big detail in a house in the Netherlands that was completed quite recently, which is you could say the entire organization of this house, which is like a flower or maybe like a Dutch windmill, is very much the detail that expresses the whole project, the whole building, maybe expresses also what this whole family is about and what their living pattern is about, and also what the environment is about, because it is set in a very extremely Dutch landscape. And because of the organization, it really takes the landscape right within the heart of the project. And so it comes here, you see this Dutch meadows with the cows peacefully grazing and the sea at the end of it. And this landscape really goes right into the house, and you are experiencing it from much closer than you would be if you have a more frontal organization where the window leads to a flat view that you look out of. Here we are being embraced by the view. Here we see how then, of course, we always have to make it a little bit richer and a little bit more complicated with the different levels, so that experience of sharing also that view on the inside becomes really is happening at all the different levels. And so we have this relationship with the view outside, but then of course that has an effect also in internal relationships and how people are aware of each other in the house, how they are how the staircase is this very light-filled spine in the house. And at the same time there are also little details. This is not a big detail, but it's a little detail in a facade where we are making a very light reference maybe to some craftsman style traditions in Dutch architecture with brickwork. Oops, I'm going a little bit too quickly. Another big detail we can find in this airport that we built and are still currently working on in Kutaisi in Georgia, and this detail, there are actually several maybe details playing through this one in this project. The first, we can see this corner, which to us was a sort of a translation of a door, the door being the inviting entrance to departure. But mostly it is really, the big detail is again one of organization. We see here in the center a sort of reversed cupola. It's a sort of a globe, semi-globe hanging down in the space, and it is the divider of the space. We here separate the people going out and coming in, but they are separated in a very transparent way. You can still see each other, and this is something that we are also, as I'll take you along and show you a few more projects, you will also see that that is also an important facet of our work. We believe very much in trying to make spaces that flow, and this relates again to the connectivity of people and experience and people's behavior and the place, the environment, to make those merge very intimately and very connectedly, and not create harsh barriers, but let people find their way in a project in quite natural way, aided by light and by flowing lines, and we see that happening in this project. And also in this project, on a much larger scale, a technological university, a campus project in Singapore, where we have a very sustainable solution. There's a use made of patios, internal courtyards, which capture cool breezes, and this makes it possible to create a lot of spaces that are not necessarily air conditioned, which is very challenging in a climate such as Singapore, which is very tropical, very humid. But the big detail is one of creating these moments that are inside, outside spaces along this pattern. And the spaces have a hybrid nature. They are not just they are not only not air conditioned but are spaces that people just pass through naturally. They are also thereby a sort of informal learning spaces, and a lot of learning now is really, scientists are discovering it is taking place more in an informal way. It happens often that students meet each other or meet a professor in the corridor, and then they have a more informal exchange, or they meet in a small study group, and this is now often in a way a more effective form of learning than how we are now here, for instance, seated today in quite a formal way. We might actually, with each of you, I might possibly have a more inspiring and fruitful exchange if we were just having a quick meeting, as it were. So this organization is all based on allowing those things to happen in these natural spaces, and thereby also creating a lot of walkability, so a much more healthy environment. So we find it important to create those programs that can be a little bit in between, as in that case it mixes together an informal learning place with also an informal inside-outside environment along these more formal spines. So that is a kind of an innovative approach also to a campus and to a learning environment. In this project, a loft conversion in New York, the big detail, I think, is something you can see very, very clearly immediately. It's quite obvious. It's that ceiling that again makes a suggestion of flowing through. So, funnily enough, the apartment is not really structured by walls as such. What really structures the apartment mostly is the ceiling structure. Whatever little sort of space is separated from the entire free-flowing form of the loft, like this bedroom, is then still kept completely open. And here we see how that works. There's very little space division. It's really structured by this light ceiling. But what you can also see in these little sections is that there is also quite a practical reason for that. We can see it, for instance, here. And that is namely that the loft is quite low. It's quite a low space. So the light ceiling, which also with its wavy lines, distracts a little bit from that and makes you not feel so oppressed that the ceiling is really almost falling on top of you, because the lines lead your view away. So human experience and the perception of space is a skill that architects can work with, and that you can develop and work with much and much more, and experiment for and innovate. And we are so lucky that now we are living in an age where for the first time a lot of intuitions that we maybe had as architects on those topics can now be tested out by science and by data collection. And from big data we can learn if these intuitions about our view lines and how we can open up spaces and invite people to go to several spaces, if they can really be borne out by science. So here we see then, an overview of this loft-like space, and we can see that, it is actually someone lives there, but their whole life is fully dedicated to art, and they have very little, conventional living space in this. So this is, that it also is an acknowledgement of the variability of people's different needs in how they want to live, and that innovation is also very important, because we should not rely on assumptions and on that everyone has the same needs, or that things have been done in a certain way and they should continue like that, because there can be a lot of variability in that. Now, a third knowledge tool I want to talk a little bit about is the twist. And this is again a big also organizing detail, which bundles up a lot of different ideas, construction methods, and also human experience and behavioral implications all in one encompassing gesture. And we see this in this project, which was realized finally about 1.5 years ago, and which we worked on nearly 20 years. So this is a large project that we were involved in, and we went through many different phases with this project. So it wasn't that there was 20 years and that nothing happened and suddenly it was there. No, every year something was completed, underground parking garage, these 2 towers and so on. And then finally last year the central hall was completed. And what is very fascinating about this project, that it is also very much a network project where in some ways as architects, we were able to take on a little bit of a political role, and we were a catalyst for stakeholders to change their power relations in this project. But what this was because how we did that is that this was a traditional railway station location. And when we became involved in this project, the first thing we did was question that. Do we really need a new train station here? And what we did was we looked at the location and we found that actually maybe around 30% of people only are on that location to go to the station. So 70% of people are not interested in the station when they are on that location. So this is an enormous breakthrough, because the national Dutch railways were the most important stakeholder in the project. And by saying to them, yes, you own the ground, you own the railway station, but it's not all about you. It's not really all about a railway station. We could really push the project through in many different ways. New money became available by having public-private partnerships. New money became available by the project becoming eligible for other government subsidies because of this new insight. And also the national Dutch railways were not the prime initiator, and which they were quite reluctant to do. So also the whole time frame of the project was moved forward as well. But more from an architectural point of view, the question then is, if you are dealing with a very complex project that can last a long time, we didn't know it was going to last 20 years' time, of course, then we might have had second thoughts. But we knew it. We were in for a big, complex thing. How then do you play your own role as architect? How can you keep in control of what you want to achieve? Because we have a vision too. We are not, people fully at the service of a client. We have our own ambitions and our own belief systems. And what we come up with in this case, that there are maybe 4 concepts, and the twist that I'm focusing on now is one. So it is a knowledge tool is also a very, very good way for us to be architects in a changing world and in conditions that are changing very fast. And over a period of 20 years, you can guess, how much changes there have been. There have maybe been 5 mayors, there have been 5 aldermen, there have been 5 governments. So everything is changing around you, and you are, at a huge chance of total failure or of becoming so frustrated and angry that you as an architect give up and say, slam the door, I'm out of here. And well, there's someone here in the room who has actually been at that point, I think, quite a few times, because one of our colleagues from UNStudio, Arjan Dinkse, is also here, and he'll be able to answer. If you have any questions, he'll be able to answer them, and I won't. But developing a knowledge tool that is at a level of abstraction is very important for longevity of yourself and for adaptability and flexibility in towards the future. So because this twist is describing a certain spatiality, it describes the construction with the holes in the roof that we see here. It describes curves that people can follow around and that lead them in this natural way to the platforms to catch their train. And it describes a sense, maybe, a sensation that you get, a feeling of, hey, I'm here, I'm now in Arnhem, it's identity. But what it does not do is describe a concept that you can easily catch in words and that you think, oh, great, I got it, and I go again, I've consumed it, and now I know the joke, I don't have to see it again. No, it's very much a live thing, because it's sculptural. I think this is also taking us back, if we want to, as architects, and we want to architecture also as an art. And because it's sculptural, it's free, it doesn't say what is your concept, and it also doesn't really say how you do it and what is your material. And in fact, the material was allowed to change. So instead of, again, us being confronted with failure, because we had envisaged the whole thing in concrete, and that wasn't possible, and it became steel. But for us, that wasn't a problematic change or a failure, because it's about this tool of the twist that it is all about. And here we can see it working, and we can see that there is this free-flowing space that people can occupy in their own way and find their own way around. It's very much about light all the way through. Also, the canopies on the platforms are all about light. The light that comes from these holes goes all the way down into the parking garage. So that this is the very important instruments, to find your own instruments that take you through a project and give you the consistency you are after in very complex projects is so important. And projects are not really getting any simpler. They are only getting bigger at the moment and more complex all over the world. Nevertheless, we do, and we are lucky that we want to, and we can sometimes do little projects where we can test out these ideas. And this, for instance, is an example of a pavilion. It's only a temporary pavilion in Chicago, where again we use an element like the twist to try to test it out, how it works with people. And what people can do, how we can use, as you saw in the first image, with all the different colors, when we can use technology of lighting and so on, how then you get another mood, and you invite other experiences and other behaviors of people in it. Here we can see a little bit the scale and the construction, and of course the project is also very much about the city that it is in. It is in Chicago, and we make a contrast, but also very respectful contrast, because we frame very carefully this wonderful city, how it is, with these new openings that you can approach from all different directions. Again, very important also in this other little pavilion we did in New York. And I cannot emphasize enough how important for innovation it is that, you know, architects get these opportunities also to do something small sometimes, to test out the ideas. Here it's very much about multi-directionality, a great belief of ours that we nowadays are really moving towards buildings and cities that don't have so much the front, the back and the sides as we did before, but we move and flow through the city in a much more inclusive way. We come from all sorts of directions and we love to embrace that multi-directionality in our work. A little private house in also in New York. I'll go through it quickly, but again, it's a small example on the domestic scale also of how that twist works, how it works in opening up a space and opening up and I'll show it to you also in a little while in a bigger project to the diagonal views. So you can see people move through space in a very inviting way. And this project actually was the, I think it was maybe the second designed twist, but the first realized twist. It's a very compact twist in Austria, Graz, in a music theater, where this twist, again, like in Arnhem, it is a people mover, it is an announcer of a space, it's a celebration of the space and of how people have a nice evening out in this theater. And but it's also simply the construction. It's also very, very functional. And I'm not so good with the number side of this profession, but I have been told that it's also quite efficient in terms of material use to work with a tool such as this, because you, instead of having multiple columns all over the space, you have much more free space to use however you like, and you also use the material. You condense, you compact the material. So this theater, really, this is the public aspect of the building where the twist lets people use that public spaces, and when they are in the theater, as we are here, they are of course much more contained in a more rigid space. And then the project was also already mentioned. Mercedes-Benz also makes use of the twist in the way that the different floor levels jump and fuse together to each other. It is an organization and a pattern of a building that is of a misleading simplicity, I would almost say, because it's this cloverleaf, this trefoil, so you can really trace it all the way through, and the organization. So simple in a way, but that plays out on many different floor levels that are stacked together, but of which some are double height and others not. So it's in the end it becomes also spatially quite complex, but therefore also spatially very rich. And the twist makes sure that there's a continuation all the time. And here we see, and it's always has such a charm that, and luckily we can also still do that as architects, make these paper models and test out endlessly and fiddle around with it. But here we see then how it works out and how these different plateaus really interrelate. What happens is in the museum is you take up the elevator to the top, and then you meander down. You can just walk down in the shape of a double helix. So there are two paths that you could choose one, but you can also sometimes cross over. So if you want to see the whole museum, you can just go down and do first one and then the other, but you can also cross over. But you are continuously walking down. So even though it's complex, you can't really lose your way. And what is so special about it is that you, as you are continuously circling around this open void at the center, you have all the time a view of where are you going next, or where have you just been to. And that is something that we are also very much believers in, that we don't want to create spaces that are just in front of you, that are opening up wide like a big room, but then also full of narrow corridors with very strictly limited view lines. We are very interested in offering people a sense of the space all around them. If you are interested in perception, there's someone who wrote already maybe 30 years ago, or longer even, a book on the ecological sense of perception, which is all about how we as people actually our views are a little bit all around. Not, of course, the whole way around. We can't look to the back completely, but somewhat. And then we turn our heads as well. We are free to move around. So we are sometimes designing buildings and cities as if people are very static, as if we are statically constructed and we just can only look in one line forward. This is not what we are about. We want to really enjoy that much more freer ecological sense of space that we as humans can have, that we can offer that in our works. This is actually the third knowledge tool that I'm talking about now, the void, and I will show that along according to a project that is recently completed in China, in Hangzhou, and that is an example of what I said, that we experience that projects are only getting more complex and bigger, because this is like a 450,000 square meter project, 2 towers, each over 250 meters tall, and but they are a totally mixed-use project. Let's show the film, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. It's a mixed-use project where these 2 towers are very intricately connected. These are drone photos of the completed project. It is quite a stunning quality of realization. We are very, very happy with the building result. You can see very perfect detail of the fins here. The 2 towers, they look as if they are identical, but in fact they're not quite identical and not symmetrically. They are placed opposite each other on this big podium, and it's about a 6 or 7 level high podium, which again a lot of courtyards in it. And openings to let in a lot of daylight deep into the spaces, a lot of green. There's also a metro connection at the underneath the whole project. So for us, it's something that is very interesting typology. That these, and very important also, that we don't develop projects singularly. You know, one tower, another tower, and there's nothing that relates them. We are really think that the future now is these mixed-use projects that combine a lot of different functions together, private and public, so that people can form communities in there, that they can have, you can have your work, your leisure, your sport, your culture, all within walking distance. No need for too many cars in the city, no need for people to waste a lot of their time in transportation. And recent studies are also pointing towards that, surprisingly enough, city living is much healthier for exactly those reasons than, for instance, suburban living, because people living in suburbs spend so much time in cars and they don't have a lot of social life because of time restrictions. Now here we can see what is that mixed use. So in this case, it's a neighborhood, really, but in one skin. So we have serviced apartments, hotels, offices, and then we have this public retail podium. At the bottom, here we see those courtyards. And here we see also the reasoning for the situation of the towers as they are diagonally opposite. They each take in different parts of the city and of the landscape. This project is right outside the CBD of Hangzhou, and which is a wonderful green city with a beautiful lake. But they are also situated in such a way that the views just cross each other. So we're not inside, we're not staring at our opposite neighbor. And here we see the principle where we have an in Mercedes-Benz we have the trefoil, the threefold. Here we have two figures of 8 superimposed upon each other. I want to be a little bit looking at the time, because where are we going? I know that there's an important event after this, so I don't want to take up too much time. But I was going to go to also, maybe this is a project for a small research institute in Germany, which also works very much with the knowledge tool of the void, and again refers also to what I said about the SUTD, the campus project we did in Singapore, that we are the last years, but maybe always very invested in contributing to health and healthy environment. So this whole project is connected through a core, which is a walkable atrium with a staircase, and of course there's also a lift, but we hid it a little bit around the corner so that people are very naturally attracted to walk on the stairs and then meet each other, like the students meet each other for informal chat, for informal talk, so that you can see what you are doing and you talk about it. So the whole organization is based on that. Now the final, I'll go a little bit more quickly, again because of your big event. But the final knowledge tool that I wanted to talk about is that of the public construct. And that means that architecture and the city are now, with these bigger scale projects, they are moving very closely together. In a project like the 2 towers in China that I just showed you, it's difficult to say, is this an urban design or is this architecture? And the same goes for a project that we are currently working on. And this is in Frankfurt, Germany, a competition we very recently won, very excited about it. And this is about 4 different towers. Just a little film.
The former Deutsche Bank area is situated in an unrivaled inner-city location. The new district being developed is turning into a vibrant hub in the heart of Frankfurt. UNStudio of Amsterdam has planned a unique ensemble that will confidently become part of the Frankfurt skyline and a new identity-establishing part of the city, which stands for diversity and quality of life. A healthy living space that promotes integration and sustainability. The towers, which are rotated at 90 degrees to one another, create a principle of 360-degree views. The idea of a front and a back facade is avoided. To the south, the new quarter is connected to the Große Gallusstraße, which invites you to wander and linger. This is where people work, live and relax. The insular construction now opens on all 3 sides of the plot. The various entry points to the district are defined here. The district square will become the site's central anchor. Movement analyses have shown us how the building volume geometry and the routing work best. The mixed-use district will promote a healthy and sustainable inner-city living space. The food hall will serve as a key link between the district square and the Junghofstraße. The existing 50s facade along the Junghofstraße remains mostly untouched. 2 structural incisions are connecting the district square and the T4 office tower. A unique green roof garden on top of the base area serves as a publicly accessible natural haven in the heart of the city and high above the rooftops of Frankfurt.
It's a project about people, the people, of course, of Frankfurt. It's about social sustainability in the city, active liveliness within the center. It's a project for all.
Connectivity, again, it comes down to that. Connectivity of people, of technology and of the city, and we really are at a moment where we have all the opportunities to achieve that. And yeah, so this will be, in fact, the tallest residential tower in Germany. And not because it's got a big mast on top of it, but it's really itself fully architectural, big tower. And what is also very interesting about it, and maybe also betrays again our Dutchness, it is mixed, also mixed use in terms of mixed population groups. So there are high-end residential apartments in it, but there is also social housing in it. So the city also wants to literally be, as Ben said, a city for all. And we are also very much in favor of that and of letting people live closely together. So we have the public plinth with this with a rooftop on top of it. We have all sorts of things happening at different levels that let people also go up. Because as I also said about Mercedes-Benz, where we opened up those diagonal views, I didn't go so directly or so in such detail into it in the project in China, but there too those atriums are very much organized on a diagonal. By letting people see each other, you also create these vibrant locations in the city, and it's a very important aspect if you want to achieve a lively city, to really also create a lot of transparency and visibility to show people up in the city. So I'm ending, of course, with a project that is not yet there, but so therefore my ultimate slide is going to be a sort of a mixture of images that we scraped from social media and from Instagram that do show how people are living with our projects, because that too is maybe our knowledge tool of the future, is the post-occupancy knowledge and analysis. We now are also able as architects to follow at the long term what is really happening, how are people behaving in it, and it is, so it is also an example again of technology being a very important connective factor to people and place. Thank you very much.